morning. On behalf of the California ISO, I'd like to welcome you to the 2022 Participating Transmission Owner Per Unit Cost Meeting. My name is Elisandra Casillas, representing the Stakeholder Affairs Group here at the ISO, and I will be facilitating today's meeting. And I'm also joined by Salim Tavares, Senior Interconnection Specialist. This presentation, along with other materials related, can be found on the process webpage. Next slide, please. Thank you. Just some housekeeping reminders. This call is being recorded and the video file will be posted on the process webpage for information and convenience purposes only. The recordings and any related transcriptions should not be reprinted without the ISO's permission. This meeting is structured to stimulate dialogue and engage different perspectives. Please remember to keep comments professional and respectful. Also, please try and be brief and refrain from repeating what has already been said so that we can manage the time efficiently. Next slide. For questions, we will pause for questions periodically throughout the meeting. You can raise your hand by selecting the hand icon above the chat window in WebEx, or if you've joined via audio only, please press #2 on your device. Remember, please state your name and affiliation first. You may also send your question via chat to all panelists. If you need technical assistance during today's meeting, please feel free to send a chat to the event producer. Next slide, please. Thank you. After I'm finished with my introduction, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Salim Tavares to kick off today's meeting. Then we will proceed with the presentation of the 2022 Draft Per Unit Cost Guide with SDG&E, SCE, VEA, GLW, DCRT, and PG&E. And from there, I will go over the next steps at the end of the meeting. From here, I will turn it over to Salim Tavares.
Thanks, Ellie. So again, my name is Salim Tavares. I just wanted to give you a quick summary of the purpose of the Participating Transmission Owner Per Unit Cost Guides. Can you go ahead and go to the next slide, please? Okay, so the purpose of the Participating Transmission Owner Per Unit Cost Guide is for the PTOs to annually update and publish their per unit costs for use during the current interconnection study cycle for estimating the cost of facilities required to interconnect generation to the ISO grid. So the ISO does facilitate this process. So now we can go ahead and go through each PTO's cost guide. So Ellie, I'll turn it back to you. I think SDG&E is going first.
Yes. Operator, we will need to promote the individuals from SDG&E.
All right, one moment, please. I see that would be Sam and Bruno and Hi. So guys, stand by 1 minute while I promote you. Then you'll be able to share your content on the screen. All right, so the folks I have promoted from, let's see, we have Hi, we have Sam, and Bruno. You guys go ahead and unmute yourselves. And let me know which one of you wants to share your screen first.
This is I. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, let me, the share button is not highlighted for me.
Yes, I'm giving you presenting rights. I just needed to know which one was going to go first. So Hi, I've gone ahead and given you presenting rights. So go ahead and share.
Yes. Okay, let me make sure I share the right screen.
Yep.
1 moment.
Are you okay? Press share and then my screen. Yep.
It's not allowing me to share the screen that I want to share.
So, Hi, you should be able to select share and then my screen.
Okay. now it's giving me that option. Fine.
Yes.
Okay.
And then you should be able to share your content.
Okay. Let me know when you're able to see my spreadsheet.
Yep, I can see you're starting to share. I do not. Yep, we see it now. Perfect.
Okay. So similar to what we did last year for the unit cost guide on the transmission side, starting with row 109, the removal of transmission lines, single circuit. In general, the rates that we've seen for 2021 have increased by 8%. So as you can see, for single circuit removals, what we've accounted for were projects that we've done in 2021. So it's $1,080,000 for a single circuit per mile removal, and for reconductor or upgrading transmission lines. We have the low, medium, and high complexities. By voltage, the nominal costs or unit costs are the same. It's just the complexity of the project that would drive the costs to go up. And some of the factors would be, the remote locations with difficult access, permitting, the CPUC filing type, crossings, whether they're single and double conductor, or whether or not they're distribution, underbuild, or fiber. Otherwise, the lump sum costs for engineering costs, the engineering costs are already built into our unit rates per mile, and these are inclusive of engineering and other administrative costs. Some of the factors and assumptions would include using a 5-day work week, and also some of the costs may go up to or an additional 50% for contingency, depending on our certainty or the information we have available when the cost estimate is being requested. And our costs don't include AFUDC or CIAC tax for customer relocation projects. Otherwise, the escalation rates are provided using global insights data for inflation or expected inflation for the next 9 years. And when we perform our estimates, we'll take these escalation rates into account for future years, since a lot of the costs may be and will be incurred in several years from today. And this was last released, provided to us November of 2021. Otherwise, I can turn it back over to Sam or Bruno for the substation costs. Sam, Bruno, if you want me to continue sharing, I can do that as well.
Yeah, if you don't mind, just real quickly back to the factors and assumptions. One other item that we added here was kind of a minimum cost. We have experienced some projects that have gone through with Gentai sharing, other things like that, where we've estimated a zero cost for that in the past, because there isn't actually any work to be done between the point of change ownership and the POI. But there is other costs that we find that are associated with those that we've shown here that you would be expecting to see, regardless of kind of the configuration of your connection. So with that, maybe you can go back to the cost details and pass over to Bruno.
Yes, thank you, Sam. Bruno, let me know if you need me to scroll up or down.
Yeah, just scroll. Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, just scroll up to the substation part. It'll be coming up, I think, right there. Go a little bit up.
There you go.
So first of all, hello everybody. My name is Bruno Velosa. I'm the substation engineer at SDE, and I will be going over the substation part of the SDE unit cost table. Just like the rest of the PTOs, we use the IIS Global Insight numbers for substation escalation rates, just like our transmission, like Hai just showed in our transmission presentation or overview. Same thing as substation assumptions have not changed from last year, so there are no updates for that section on updates on or changes. The only thing that we have had has been an increase in costs. As everybody knows, from manufacturer costs have gone up, and it's around about a 5% increase that we have seen in our substation equipment, labor, contractors, and all these other costs that have gone up. And that's an overall high-level change of that. And there's pretty much our standard cost that we have always shown over the years. Like I mentioned, there's not changes except for the increase on the 5% cost. And then pretty much that is it. That's all I have for substation, and I will pass it back to Sam or any questions to Salim.
Yeah, Salim, I think that's kind of all from us. So if there's any questions, we can field those now.
All right, I do not see any questions in the queue.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Thank you. We will now proceed with SCE. Those on the line from SCE. Our operators, have they been promoted?
Yes, they have. Go ahead. You may unmute yourself on the WebEx screen, ladies and gentlemen, by pressing the unmute button, and then you will be live.
Hello, everyone. This is Yumi Miyazaki from SCE, and I will be presenting my screen for SCE's team. I'm still looking for the share content button to work.
Yep, one moment, Yumi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
All right, you should be able to share your content now, Yumi.
Okay. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I will be doing our opening remark for SCE's team. So let's get started. Good morning, everyone. My name is Yumi Miyazaki. I'm a project advisor in the customer interconnection group of the T&D departments at SCE. And my group responsible for producing the interconnection cluster study reports and cost aggregation. So we have assembled a team of subject matter experts here in the call. And for the next 15 minutes or so, we will go over our proposed 2022 unit cost guide. Each of our cost experts will address a specific section of the unit cost guide, and they will point out highlights of that section. In a few cases, the scope has been updated to meet our current standards or new requirements in our recent studies. So I'd like to suggest to please hold any questions or comments until our presenter have completed their parts. Our first presenter is Peter Tran, and he will go over our substation elements.
Thank you, Yumi. Good morning, everyone. My name is Peter Tran. I'm a senior advisor in SCE's major project organization, Projects Control. So my responsibilities would include maintaining and developing the substation unit costs. I'm here to share some of the insights on the new unit cost that Yumi has projected on screen, and give you a high-level overview of the methodologies on how we have updated them. So the 2022 unit cost refresh includes the refresh of material pricing, a refresh of the labor wages, and a refresh to the overheads for capital projects. The material pricings were extracted from our most current and active projects to reflect 2022 dollars. The labor wage rates are based on our current IBEW approved wage. Our overhead rates reflects current SCE's transmission and distribution overhead rates for capital investments. And the unit costs you're seeing on screen are reflective of 2022 dollars. And these are some of the general assumptions that goes into them. The general labor overtime are based on a 610 work schedule. And it includes, the unit cost includes contingency factor of 35%, This is within the tolerance and guidance of AACE. Our unit cost also assumes that the facilities are constructed under an engineering procurement construction agreement and that all facilities are going to be SCE owned. The unit costs, of course, are created without benefit of full final engineering. Therefore, any unforeseen events and or scope change ultimately will result in changes in costs. Our unit costs would include procurement of all materials, installation, engineering, project management, home office. Our unit costs do not include our corporate loaders such as pensions and benefits, the administrators and generals, and AFUDCs. Unit costs do not include the income tax components of contribution, otherwise known as ITCC. These are typically generator responsibility if and when it's applied. So in closing, I believe we're going to hold questions till the end, but at this point, I do want to transition over to our telecom folks for their presentation of their portion.
Thank you, Peter. Okay. Good morning, folks. My name is Saurabh Dave. I'm the telecommunications engineer with SoCal Edison, and my staff and I are responsible for supporting the cluster study reports by providing telecommunications scope of work for all the interconnect customer requests. The Telecommunications 2022 cost guide is based on the 2021 guide, and each of the unit cost categories have been reviewed and updated to the 2022 constant dollars. And to update this cost guide, we follow the same process as last year, which involves reviewing material invoices and jobs of the last 3 months of 2021 year to monitor the cost variances. And we also compared this cost to last year's guide and noticed that there were a few changes to the telecom elements in the 2022 unit cost guide. The unit cost for the prefabricated communication building had increased due to the increase in labor cost and also change in the supplier for this item. The previous supplier of this prefab building no longer conducts business in California. There were also some nominal cost increase in the channel bank terminal equipment since this material is becoming obsolete. We also have an addition of MPLS transport material in this year's unit cost guide, and this material component will replace the lightweight material category due to its end of life. And this equipment modification contributed to the cost increase for the terminal equipment interface category. Again, the assumptions undertaken to assemble this unit cost guide are listed separately under the Telecommunications tab. And that is all I have. I'll turn it back over to Peter and Viet for the transmission cost updates.
Thank you, Dave. Hello again, everyone. So part of my responsibility also maintaining the high voltage transmission unit cost elements. Very similar to how we maintain the substation elements, the transmission unit costs updates includes refreshing of material pricing, refreshing of labor wages, and overhead rates. So material pricing, as mentioned earlier, are extracted from our most current active forward-looking projects. The labor rates are based on our current IBEW approved wage rates. The overhead is reflective of SCE, T&D overhead rates for capital projects. So for transmission projects, I would like at this point to transition to Viet, who's going to expand on impact factors that are unique to both transmission lines.
Thank you, Peter. Yumi, can we please show the bulk trans factors tab? Good morning, everyone. My name is Viet Nguyen. I'm a senior engineer in SCE's Transmission Engineering Group. Our group is responsible for the engineering and design of SCE's 220 kV and 500 kV transmission system. Earlier, Peter talked about some of the updates we had in the unit cost guide due to material and labor changes. And now I would like to discuss the impact factors of the unit cost guide. The unit cost guide attempts to account for variability of costs due to terrain, population density, and weather through impact factors. Costs can vary widely due to these impact factors. We utilize various factors to try to account for increased difficulty. Mountainous terrain, for example, may necessitate either helicopter construction of the line or require difficult access road construction. More costly micropile foundations could be required in forest areas, for example. Areas of dense population may require higher mitigation costs, like line transpositions or taller structures for electromagnetic field reduction. It is possible we might have to keep the structures under a certain height near airports, which would require closer structure spacing and therefore additional structures to maintain adequate electrical ground clearance. Weather also plays a factor in that icing and high wind areas could increase the structural loading, thereby increasing the number of structures required, or bigger and heavier structures may be needed. This summarizes SCE's methodology to estimating high voltage transmission line cost elements. Next, we will have Hugo Ayala speak on the subtrans unit costs.
Thank you, Viet. Good morning, everyone. My name is Hugo Ayala, and I am the transmission estimator with the SC Transmission Organization. The team I work with has been supporting the cluster study reports by providing the sub-transmission scope of work and costs for the interconnection customer requests. The Transmission 2022 cost guide is based on the same assumptions as the 2021 guide, and each of the unit costs have been reviewed and updated to the 2022 constant dollars. To update this cost guide, we followed the same process as last year, which our team reviewed the scope of work based on the assumptions and developed costs utilizing current labor, material, contract, and overhead rates. The costs are based on the assumptions of one SE crew working straight time. The assumptions undertaken to assemble this unit guide are listed under the subtrans tab. And that's all I have for you guys today, and I'll pass it back to Yumi.
Thank you, Hugo. I will be covering our lump sum cost section. So some project costs may vary widely depending on the specific scope in this estimate. So the unit price will not help in this case. For example, the cost of land, mere building, civil work, environmental mitigations will be different from location to location. We have provided a list of typical lump sum items in the guide, and some of these costs are likely to be included in the final study cost report. Please keep in mind that the unit cost guide excludes ITCC, corporate overheads such as P&B, pension benefits, admins and general support, and payroll tax. These allocated costs will be added to a project's total cost estimate and their final invoice as required. So next, I will pass it to Mike to address our 2022 escalation rates.
Thank you, Yumi. Can you please display the escalation rates and factors tab, which is the last tab?
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Kuzam, sorry, not Mike, and I am a senior advisor in the Regulatory Economics Division of the Treasurer's Organization at SCE. I am responsible for cost escalation across SCE, including the transmission capital escalation rates presented in the 2022 CAISO Transmission Unit Cost Guide. The escalation rates presented attempt to estimate the inflationary impacts of building transmission capital within our service territory. These rates should be applied to 2022 cost estimates for estimating the costs in nominal or year of expense dollars for transmission projects in years beyond 2022. The escalation rates are based upon one source, the Handy-Whitman Index of Public Utility Construction Costs, Electric Transmission, Pacific Region. The forecast of the Handy-Whitman Transmission Capital Cost Index is available in the IHS Market, previously known as Global Insight Power Planner product. The forecast escalation rates are based upon the most recently available IHS Market Power Planner forecast available at the time of preparation. The vintage of the escalation rates is the Q4 2021 IHS Power Planner publication, which was released on January 24th, 2022. In this unit cost guide, the escalation index is rebased to 1 in the current year, which is 2022. SCE's escalation rates can be found on the escalation rate tab shown within the unit cost spreadsheet. That's all for me on escalation rates, and I'll pass it back to Yumi for final remarks.
Thank you, Mark. So in conclusion, the 2022 proposed unit cost guide is our best efforts in forecasting SCE's unit cost for interconnection projects this year. Our estimators follows the recommended practice in accordance with Class 5 estimate conforming to the American Association of Cost Engineers AACE guidelines. I also like to thank all our engineers and estimators for their efforts in developing and updating this unit cost guide. Now, please let us know if there's any questions or comments.
Thank you, Yumi. We do have one chat question. This question is from Ali Amarali. Can SDG&E please clarify what was included in the 5% increase in substation cost?
I will pass it to Peter Tran to address the substation elements.
Yeah, good question. So in general, we can speak about the trend that we're seeing, right? Although on a corporate level, our overhead rates were trending down. However, we see large increases in material costs, particularly steel, and as well as labor wages, right? So we have two opposing forces that were going up and one going down.
Excellent, thank you. Operator, do we have any individuals in the queue?
I do not see any questions in the verbal queue.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, SCE. We will now proceed with VEA.
Thank you.
Good morning. This is Daryl Holmes from Valley Electric Association. Waiting for the share button to be activated.
All right, you should have presenting rights.
Thank you. Yes, I have presenting rights, and after Mark's excellent presentation on escalation rates, let me get rid of that window. I thought I'd start out on escalation rates. Just briefly, we adopted SCE's escalation rates, and so that's what I'm showing here. It's the same as that Mark just presented. And thank you very much, SCE, Mark, for sharing these with us and their use. In terms of our per unit cost guide, the costs themselves, we did a market survey, and we don't have a lot of 138 kV construction. This per unit cost guide is 138 kV. But what we did observe in the market when we compared our 2021 per unit cost guides to what we're seeing today is an increase in circuit breaker costs, about 5.8%. So we adopted that increase on all elements like new substation equipment and circuit breakers. And the other elements, line positions, transformers, and replacement equipment, we didn't see any increases. And that's largely due, I suspect, that we don't do a lot of 138 kV construction. So without the data to show a market increase, we kept the cost the same as our 2021. Same with our transmission lines. So basically the only cost increase we had data for was circuit breakers, and that's what we increased in the 2022 per unit cost guide. That's the end of my presentation, unless there's any questions.
There are currently no questions in the verbal queue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl, for your presentation. We will now proceed with DLW.
Good morning, everyone. This is Fanny Kidwell, Director of Development for Next Energy Transmission. I'm ready to share my screen whenever available. Great, thank you. Sorry, I do not have the right screen. Bear with me just a second. All right, let me see. All right. As you can see on the screen here, so this is 2022 per unit cost guide for Grid Alliance West with estimates for the main equipment categories for voltages of 230 kV and 500 kV with the existing Grid Alliance West system currently at 230 kV. Broadly speaking, across the board and compared to last year, estimated cost went up, I would say about 6% across the board, with a discrete group of items in this cost guide that went up 10% or above. And mostly this is driven really by commodity price increases over 2021, namely steel, aluminum, and copper. We've also seen some increases in shipping rates, land and ocean, as well as labor cost increases and just some general inflation factors. As a reminder, similar across the board, so the discussed estimates do not include corporate overhead, environmental, and permitting considerations. So that's really, broadly speaking, for the per unit cost estimates here on this tab. On the next tab, these have not changed year over year. These are the same complexity factors, project complexity factors that we provided last year. They include factors related to mountainous terrain, which is something, that we can see in southern Nevada, as well as population density to some extent. But so this has not changed since last year. And then finally, the third tab here, the annual escalation rates, have been updated again, similarly to what you've heard so far. Those rates come from IHS Global Insight, and they are based on the Pacific Transmission Plan Cost Index. So that really concludes the general overview of the 2022 draft per unit cost guide for Grid Alliance West, and I would be happy to take any questions.
I do not see any questions in the verbal queue.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you for your presentation, Fanny. We will now proceed with DCRT.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Could you please also mute my colleague, Emilio Rodriguez, who's going to be supporting me?
All right, Ali, you do have presenting rights if you would like to share your content.
I will.
And I'm sorry, you were talking about.
Right, I will do that right now, ma'am. Give me 1 second.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. And who was the other person that was your colleague?
Emilio Rodriguez.
All righty, let me see if I can remote locate him for you. Just one moment. All right, Emilio is available to speak if you need him.
Perfect. Can you folks share my see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, thank you very much. SCE and SCE, SDG&E, and all the other presenters have already done a fantastic job at sharing about the costs going up. As far as we are concerned, We only have 500 kV system, so we concentrated all our efforts into providing information on that. With regards to the escalation factors, we used an average of the consumer price and producer price index to calculate the ever escalation. With regards to the cost estimates for the per unit cost for different equipments, we actually went to the latest information that we have between the time that we estimated different cost elements for different substation items, as well as the transmission line costs from last year, from 2021 and 2022 estimates, and compared the prices and used that information that we are presenting here. Emilio, if you have anything else to add, I would be please jump in.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is since we were concerned on the mainly on the material and equipment price increases that we have seen in our most recent projects, we were trying to explain those based on published indices. We came with a formula that it was 40% of the average consumer price forecast for the USA. That was 4.3%. Plus 60% of the producer price index by industry on electrical equipment and appliance manufacturing that was published from November 2020 to November 2021. That was 13.22%. That brought us an aggregate escalation for all indices of 9.65% that we applied over the 2021. And we felt that will feel the similar cost increases as Avi has mentioned on real quoted prices from our contractors and suppliers. So, but we use that general formula to escalate prices from 2021.
The last thing I would like to add, thank you, Emilio. Last thing I want to add is the costs that we are providing do not include AFUDC or do not include the ITCC in them.
Correct.
Thank you. Any questions?
There are currently no questions in the verbal queue.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to present this information.
Thank you for your presentation, DCRT. We will now proceed with Desert Link.
Hi there, this is Nick Schwarzbach. If you could please allow access to share. You see the screen?
Yes.
Awesome. Hello. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nick Schwarzbach. I'm a lead engineer in our asset management department supporting Desert Link, and we'll be presenting our 2022 per unit cost guide. I also have Ross Holt, our asset manager for Desert Link, on the call with me as well. So to get started with the cost details here, we did not make any changes in our assumptions, comments, here in column L from last year's guide on how we put together this spreadsheet. For example, some of our assumptions for replacement substation equipment, we assume in-kind replacement, 4,000 amp rating. For a new transmission line, we assumed no environmental permitting or row acquisition. So we did, however, update some of the costs we have in this column J from last year, and we added a few miscellaneous equipment costs here. We made these updates utilizing the costs that we were seeing on our other capital projects, and this showed an increase in cost of material, equipment, and labor. For the next tab, we did not have any new assumptions to add here. And then lastly, for the escalation rates, We did update our 2022 proposed escalation rates using the electric utility construction cost forecast in the 2021 Q3 IHS Power Planet report, which everyone has been using. That's all I have at the time. Can open up for any questions. Thanks.
There are currently no questions in the verbal queue. I think there is a question in chat, though.
Michelle, we're going to go ahead and hold for that question at the end when we open up the line for additional questions. Thank you.
All right, so there are no additional questions in queue.
Thanks, Michelle. Thank you for your presentation, Desert Link. We will now proceed with PG&E.
Hi, good morning. This is MJ from PG&E. Would you please allow me to share my content? So, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is MJ Morshid from PG&E Interconnection Transmission Planning Group. And PG&E is completely updating the per unit cost spreadsheet for 2022. And this was a multiple internal stakeholder process with input from substation engineering, land and environmental, transmission line engineering, and project management and business finance. First is a substation. Added and updated cost is based on the adjustment and actuals or projections from generation interconnection studies completed in 2021. Kyle, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, this is Kyle. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, this is Kyle Getzla with PG&E Substation Engineering. And each year, one of the things we try and do when we go over the unit is we compare to both recent phase one studies and to project actuals. In this case, the yellow highlights are the ones that saw the biggest changes. There's been plenty of discussion about material and labor rates going up. I think that can easily explain some of the smaller increases on here. Ones down in the double operating bus sections, those did increase significantly. I think they increased over 100%. Some of these, and we highlighted the scope changes over here. For double bus, we did not have a lot of actuals leading up to prior years and prior updates. And just in the past year, we had 2 projects complete that were doing double bus extensions. So what it appears is that the scope and the unit cost included the base structure for it, but it didn't include all the ancillary work that's typically needed and has been getting added in recent studies. So the description was updated there to include the general site work, modify the structures, the lighting, and what else? And in general, the costs were increased just because a lot of the existing double buses we have are very old structures and don't conform with the newest standard. So the extensions are not as practical as we would like. We tend to implement the new standard structure and then find a way to connect it to the old bus. So there's usually some little interface that has to be designed there. The other ones that increased, the line protection relays went up over 50%. These are remote terminal upgrades typically used for when we have a new switching station and we upgrade remote terminals. Our protection standard has changed in a few years back now, but we're starting to realize the actuals of that. So in addition to changing out line relays, we typically have to change out breaker control relays as well so that they're compatible with the new relays. So those costs went up. The direct transfer trip went up a fairly good jump, although it's a lower value than a lot of these other ones. This, we've been using two different values for direct transfer trip, and the prior number was really the average of those two values, so that we weren't giving a high or a low estimate. It appears that we're using the high value in the majority of our studies now, and we're confirming that with actual projects as well. So we decided to just go ahead and put the high-end value here. Interconnection studies will still see the low one at sites that have existing ETCs, but we didn't choose to list that on here. I think that covers pretty much the biggest changes, and there were some responses to questions from the ISO as well. So if we need to cover those, I can do so later. Back to you, MJ.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. The next section is transmission line, and we have increased transmission line cost by 1.7% across the board, which takes into account construction, labor, and material increases. And for escalation rates, at the time the draft was prepared, PG&E financial team did not have this information. So we plan to update this information in April, and our expectation is it will match SCE and SD&E escalation rates. So is there any question?
There are no questions on the line.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, PG&E, for your presentation. We will now pause for any final questions.
This is Mark Kizam with SCE. Yumi posed a question in the chat regarding, and I think PG&E just answered from their perspective, but the question for SDG&E, what was the reasoning for using the 2021 base escalation rates and not re-updating for 2022? Or is there an intention to update to using base 2022 rates? Thank you.
Hi, this is Sam from SDG&E. I'll have to get back with our team. They had to drop off at 10:30. But I think my understanding was that because we didn't have new rates for 2022 when we're putting this together, which is, basically at the end of 2021 is why we had those rates. But I can check.
Thank you.
Thank you for your response.
All right, I do not see any questions on the line.
Thank you, Michelle. If you could please go to the next slide. Michelle, can you go to the next slide, please?
Hold on one moment. I need to make sure I have the presenting rights, so let me just do that.
Thank you.
Okay, that's why you can see that. All right, you should be good.
Thank you. Our next step.
Is it this one or the next one? I'm sorry.
Next slide, please. Yes. Thank you. For next steps, as a reminder, comments on the draft per unit cost guides are due by end of day March 15th. Please use the comment template on the process webpage to submit your comments. We also plan to post the final per unit cost guides by April 1st. Next slide, please. Thank you to all who presented during today's meeting and for those who've joined today's discussion. As a reminder, this meeting was recorded for informational and convenience purposes only. The video file will be posted on the process webpage for a limited time after this meeting. We look forward to receiving your comments and have a great rest of your day.
That concludes our conference. Thank you for using Event Services. You may now disconnect.